How do you explain charging objects by rubbing them with a cloth? To start explaining this, we need to know that all materials are made up of atoms, which have a positive nucleus and negative electrons around it. Each atom has enough electrons to balance the charge of the nucleus, so atoms have a total charge of 0. The electrons in an atom can be removed, but the nucleus cannot. If an electron leaves an atom, there aren't enough electrons left to balance out the positive charge of the nucleus, so the atom becomes a positive ion, like this. In the following diagrams, I've used large red circles to represent the positive ions and smaller blue circles for the electrons. They're not to scale. In reality, electrons are actually much smaller than this compared to an ion, but you need to be able to see them to understand what I'm talking about. So here we've got our rod and a cloth. Before we start, each ion in the diagram has an electron to balance it out. So the overall charge in this situation of both the cloth and the rod is 0. When the two materials are rubbed together, some electrons move from one material to the other. The one that the electrons have moved onto, the cloth in this example, now has a negative charge, as there are more electrons than positive ions. The material that the electrons moved off, here, that's the rod, has a positive charge, as there are more positive ions than negative electrons. You can see that really clearly. On the cloth, there are more blue dots than there are red dots, and on the rod, there are more red dots than there are blue dots. So how do we explain this if you're asked in an exam? Well, first of all, you need to point out that electrons are negatively charged and they're scraped off the rod onto the cloth when the cloth and the rod are rubbed together. Secondly, you need to point out that the cloth gained electrons, so has more negative charge than positive charge, therefore overall it has a negative charge. Common mistakes that I see people making. Some people will say that there are positive electrons. There aren't, okay? There's no such thing as a positive electron. The second mistake I see people making is saying that protons, ions or atoms move. They don't. It's only ever the electrons that move. The other thing people do is get the direction of the electrons wrong. Electrons always move onto the negative material and off the positive material. So, in summary, things that you should be saying. Always point out that electrons are negative. Always talk about electrons moving and nothing else. It is electrons that go onto the object that becomes negatively charged, and it is always electrons that leave the object that is positively charged. Nothing gains a positive charge by gaining positive charges. They always lose the negative charges. They lose the electrons, so there's nothing to balance the positive charge left. If you have any comments, drop them down below, and if you want to be notified of the next video, please like, subscribe and hit the bell. See you next time.